my father was a wharfie in Cairns, and it got too hot for my mum, and we finally came to Wollongong, where they'd met. We finally bought a house at Warilla Beach, when Warilla was like a little, just a main road and a few houses along the beach, basically. And the closest high school was Kiama. So we used to get the Kiama school bus to Kiama High, which was right along the coast. You'd see the Boneyard and the Shallows and Bombo Beach and Kiama Beach. And it was just, most of the kids on the bus were either body surfers or board surfers, you know. And I started body surfing with them. I just saw these 3 lads, a couple of years older than me, just standing on these surfboards, streaking across this wave, you know, and I wanted to be one of them. The first time I stood up on a board was when I borrowed Ronnie Cochran's new foam board. Everybody had a balsa board, you know, but Ronnie Cochran had one of these new foam boards. I borrowed Ronnie Cochran's board and just paddled for a wave and just stood up without thinking, really, and found myself going right and just went flying right until the wave sucked out and wiped out. And I just paddled out again and got wiped out again, paddled out again, got wiped out again, just paddled out till Ronnie called me in, you know, like he wanted his board back. And I was just totally hooked. I was probably 15, 16, and I bought an old balsa board that nobody else wanted off a guy called Biscuits. It was waterlogged and it was bits of glass peeling off. It had holes in it. And yeah, I rode that. That's how I started surfing. A couple of years after that, I went to Kiama to see my girlfriend. And on a Saturday afternoon, and she dropped me. I realised I was dropped, you know, she was with another Kiama guy, you know, and I realised that I'd been dropped. And I was feeling down in the dumps, you know, and I borrowed a board, paddled out in the surf, scratched onto this peak, came into the shore break, and got smashed in the shore break and snapped my 2 front teeth off. So I come up spitting bits of tooth, you know. My girlfriend's dropped me, I've smashed my teeth, you know, I was feeling pretty down. And gave the board back, just sort of sitting on the beach wall there at the beach and back to the surf. And I looked across and there was something I'd never seen before, a duffel coat sort of walking towards me. You know, I was just, and it was a fascinating thing, you know, because, you know, the wool and the rope with the little wooden toggles, you know, I was just looking at this duffel coat. And it walked right up to me, and it was a babe, like it was a 19-year-old girl, you know. And she must have thought I was looking at her. And she came up and said, "Oh, how are you going?" You know, said hello to me, started talking to me, and I told her, you know, my troubles, and we had a lovely little talk. And we started talking about Hemingway and the bits of classical music that I knew, because she was a uni student from Sydney on holidays. And I'd never met a uni student before, you know, like it was, like they were kind of like aliens, you know. My dad was a wharfie, and my mates we were all just beach kids, you know, like, and I was fascinated by this uni student. And she said, "Come up to my flat where I'm staying, I've got something that I want to show you." So I tagged up, you know, up the steps to this little flat, and she reached under the bed and pulled out a classical guitar, and she played. "Can I play the music that she played me? I'll have to get the guitar out." So she pulled out a Spanish guitar from under the bed and just started playing, and this is exactly the music she played. I recognised it years later, and a friend taught me how to do it. And I sat there and cried. I was very embarrassed, but I just sat there and cried because it was such a beautiful thing for me to hear this guitar up close. You go surfing and things happen that you can't intellectually plan for. Your rational mind can't plan for them. Like there's so many things happen in surfing that you just, after it's all finished, you think, hey, did I decide to do that? How did that happen? Like you're inside a barrel, you just aim up a little bit, get a bit of height, It starts to get steeper, starts to break a bit in front of it, go down for speed, But it's almost not as if your mind doesn't make that decision. It's another part of your body makes that decision. And it's the same with music, especially if you're jamming with somebody. You're in a flow situation, and the best music comes out when you switch off and just let your instrument create the music. And I think there are heaps of similarities between surfing and music. I was about 24, I suppose, and I thought, I'm going to be a singer-songwriter. I'll be a singer-songwriter. I was living with my wife Lynn, who I'd just married, out at Newport, and doing concerts at this place called the Shack, Narrabeen, and concerts at a place called the Arts Factory in the city. And I used to do gigs at the Yellow House as well. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Yellow House. Yeah. So I was getting work as a singer-songwriter with these new songs that I'd pumped out, but it was $20. I was getting $20 a set at the Arts Factory. It wasn't paying the bills, so I was working scraping barnacles at Newport, down on the water at Newport, and surfing, always surfing. 3 other bands that I got to know at the Arts Factory: Tully, Nutwood Rug, and Tamam Shud. And the Shud boys said they'd been writing music for surf movies, and Tully had been doing it as well. And I became pretty good friends with them. Started doing some shows with them. It was a great little scene because Tully just lived down the road that way, and the Shud lived up the hill that way in Newport. And then I read in Tracks magazine that they were doing a surf story writing competition, and the prize was a stereo. And we didn't have a stereo. Like, we're pretty broke. I thought, stereo, I'll go in this competition. So I wrote a story and won the competition. And the editors of Tracks magazine were David Elphick and Albie Falzon at that stage. And they were the guys who were making the movie. And I knew they were making a surf movie. I said, do you want me to write a song? I can write a surf song if you like. I said, I could give it a go, we'll have a listen to it. So I wrote I'm Alive, took it up to David's place and sang it to them, and they loved it. They went bananas over it, and David said, we'll give you a call. And I just went to work every day, scraping barnacles, home, practicing, scrape barnacles, practice, Well, I got to the studio, packed studio it was called, just up above Darling Harbour in the city, in Sussex Street. And G. Wayne was there. He said, listen, man, I just met him and shook his hand, and I said, listen, man, I nearly run out of studio time. We haven't got much time. We did a couple of takes, and then Wayne said, thanks. And I said, you ready to do really, I said, we can make this really good, And he said, no, thanks, we got it. And I said, is that it? He said, yeah, that's it. And so off I went, back on the double-decker bus to Newport. My song wasn't a pop song. My song was just a guy playing a guitar trying to give the person who listened to it a feeling of what it's like to be surfing. And the rest of the album was great, really great pop music, So I kind of thought, I was a bit embarrassed. And I didn't realise that people were loving that song.
Look around at the day. Oh, look around at the day. I'm alive on being around where waves come smiling with curls all flying. Yeah, spend a lot of time inside the world of delightful rain. And the whirly wind blows its song round the bay. And the whirly wind knows my name. I'm alive on being around where waves come smiling with curls all flying. Here I spend a lot of time inside the world of delightful rain. And the whirly wind blows its song round the bay. And the whirly wind knows my name.
I remember looking at the movie and thinking, hey, he's cut the movie to the music, which is a really great thing. He started with the music and cut the movie, cut vision for the music. So the music is a standalone. The music's not just added to enhance the vision. The music is there and the movie's there almost to enhance the music. That was my first thought, And I thought, oh yeah, good surfing. He's just done photographs of what people do, I didn't think it was anything special. I thought Albie's just gone out and just filmed people just living the life that we're all living. And I didn't think it was anything. As a matter of fact, I thought it was pretty everyday and ordinary, Now I realise that it was an amazing moment in history of people getting back, trying to get back to living in harmony with nature, surfing and gardening and living out of the city. But when I first saw it, I just, that was stuff that I'd taken for granted because I've been doing it, Yeah. Shortly after I recorded that song, I realised that I didn't want to make a career out of commercial music. I got an idea of what it was going to be like to be a musician, depending on money, on paying the bills with music. And I knew a few musicians who were scratching around trying to make a living doing it. And I knew what the industry was like. There's backstabbing, there's it's a struggle just to pay the bills, always. And so I decided that I wanted to spend the rest of my life living in harmony with nature, and being a product of a big record company sort of didn't fit into that, really. Everybody else that we knew pretty well was heading north. They were all heading north to live in farmhouses for $5 a week, to live in tents, to whatever. They were just leaving. And we thought, that's it. There's a revolution happening here. The Western world is going to fall apart, and everything is just going to be rebuilt by people like us who go back, get in touch with nature. It sounds so corny now. Get in touch with nature, go surfing, grow veggies, build houses, and it's going to be all so simple. And we're going to get back to the basics. So we packed the combi with them, with all our stuff and a little baby, and off we went. Helped run a health food restaurant for a winter, then moved to Broken Head, lived in a tent, and I surfed the most beautiful waves at Broken Head, my most unforgettable waves. Often had them to myself early in the morning. And played a lot of music for the right reasons. Not to make money, but because music is a beautiful thing to play, to do, But I wasn't making any money out of it all. It was almost like I decided that I didn't really want to make money out of music. And finally, my surfboard broke in two. We were flat broke, living in a lovely little farmhouse just up the back of Bangalore. I thought, bugger it. We were both sick of being broke. And I said, I'll go back to teaching to make some money. And we drove the combi back to Wollongong, where our parents lived, to Warilla. So I applied for a job on the south coast. And I asked for Eden, Panbilla, Merimbula. Got a job in Eden. And that was the beginning of 30 years teaching in this area. Always with the guitar right behind my table, I didn't have to say, okay, Pete, now go to your guitar practice. The kids would go out of the room and I go, for 30 years. And I do singing with the kids. I love doing singing with the kids. So if you've got a class, 10 minutes a day singing, by the end of 10 weeks, you've got them singing harmony, and the classroom really cooks, So I had such a great time doing music with kids. It was fantastic. It was like the central thing in my teaching. I taught music 2 days a week at Bega Primary, which is so much fun. I just loved it. Played in church every Sunday, so I was doing heaps of playing. And retired from teaching. Now, I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you. This is without a word of lie. Had a couple of beers with the teachers the day I retired. Went home, went to sleep. Woke up the next morning, turned on the computer, opened the email. There was an email from Tim Gaze. Pete, you want to get back together and play some music together? And I thought, whoa. I hadn't talked to Tim for 30 years. And he was an amazing electric guitar player, And I thought, I was just so excited, And then Janet and I bought a boat. Retired, you get your retirement package. We bought a boat because I'd always wanted to sail to Cairns. So we sailed to Cairns for a winter, came back, and there were so many beautiful things happened to us that I thought, I really want to make a beautiful album that brings the ocean into people's ears. what it's like to be on the ocean, what it feels like, to feel the wind in your face, you know, to feel the spray, to feel what it's like to be on the water. And I asked Tim about it. I said, Tim, you interested in doing an album with me? He said, I'll have a listen, you know. So we sailed up the Brisbane River, dropped the anchor off the Botanic Gardens, and I gave Tim a call, you know. He said, you're coming. I'll come down and pick you up. So he drove his little car down and picked me up and took me to his little home studio. He said, okay, Pete, what do you got for me? So he recorded all my ideas, and I gave him a sheet where I'd said, okay, track 1, Birds of Mary River. I described the situation like you're anchored in the river, everything's really still, and these beautiful white birds come flying up the river, 50 at a time. Every night, just beautiful birds, and eastern reef egrets. And they fly up the river past the boat. Sometimes their wings just tip the water. They fly up around the bend, and then you look down and another flock come flying up. Then they disappear around the bend in the river. And if this piece, I gave this all to Tim on a bit of paper. If this piece was a fabric, it would be silk. If it was a food, it would be tomato soup. If it was what else? An animal, it would be a dolphin. If it was so for every track, I gave him this huge feel for each track, and we sent what Tim had recorded to David Menier, and David was stoked. He said, I'll fund it. I'll fly you and Tim down to Melbourne to spend a week with Karen Tolhurst, who he flew over from Arizona, where he's got a studio. He's the guy out of the Dingoes. He wrote Way Out West Where the Rain Don't Fall. You know that song? Great band. He's a record producer in the States now. So brought Karen over, and we spent a week. Tim and I, he put us up in this little apartment at St Kilda, so we just played all day and all night. Sat there in a big chair like this. Tim and I had played. I mean, the bass player turned up, beautiful bass player from Adelaide turned up for these rehearsals, and Karen would just sit there, you know, close his eyes, and we'd play these pieces, and Tim had come up with this amazingly beautiful guitar licks, and I'd be sometimes sitting there with tears rolling down my cheeks, you know. It was so beautiful. It moved me so much. And Karen would sit there with his eyes closed, and sometimes I'd look up and think, is he gone to sleep or what, you know? And then he'd finish the tune, you know, be a bit of silence, you know, he'd sort of open his eyes and he'd say, bar 20, around about bar 27, you want to try it, can we try a G minor 6th instead of a G minor 7th there? Like, he just had an amazingly acute ear, you know? And it was such a luxury to play music with a beautiful bass player, with one of Australia's great guitar players, and this really, really beautiful record producer. So we spent a week in this room in Melbourne, and then we went to Adelaide to Mick Worthy's studio, which is the studio of a man who wants to catch natural sound. It's a mud brick studio built inside an old joinery shop, and he's got all of his recording technology it's all valve driven, and what he aims for is warmth. and catching natural music as it happens. Just naturally playing instruments. Musicians just looking at each other. You ready? Yeah, we know, we've got this down. Yeah, let's have an adventure here, you know, and we just catch it. 2 takes, 3 takes. At one stage we did a track called Memories of the Coast, which is there's a lot of emotion in it. And I play the melody, and then Tim does this solo. And we got through it, and Tim played this amazing solo, totally different from any other solo that he'd played in this tune when we'd rehearsed it for the weekend in Melbourne, you know. Karen came in and just said, "That's it, you've got it." I think it was first take, you know. At one stage, Karen played, and I said, "Karen, can you give us a bit of slide on this one?" Because I'd never heard him play slide, but Tim said he's an amazing slide player, and he just sort of looked around the studio and saw an old Martin, really dusty old Martin, dark brown with age, you know. It was really old guitar, it didn't look much. And he pulled it out, sat it on his lap and pulled out his big steel slide. He said, "Okay, play the tune." So we played through the tune. Played through it about 4 times, and he said, "Yeah, I think I'm getting something here." Okay, roll it, Mick. And that's called Breakfast in the Sun. It was just empty ocean in Hervey Bay and just us and all these whales. And we decided we weren't going to chase whales. And Janice said, "Why don't you play the recorder to them?" And so I started playing the recorder. And 2 whales swam up, sat there at the back of the boat. And I just started playing, and I started getting this. That phrase. And we both looked at these whales, and they were just lying there, and every now and then they just whack their big flukes, 10-foot long flukes into the water. And I thought, are they listening, or what are they doing? Are they come up to check the boat out? And we're off Port Macquarie on the way back to Sydney. And, Port Stephens, off Port Stephens. Lovely glassy morning. We're just waiting for the nor'easter. We were just wafting along at about 2 knots. It was really, really quiet, and there were quite a few whales. And I just started playing the recorder just for fun, and I played the tune, and 7 whales swam up to the back of the boat, and they just gathered themselves around the back of the boat while I played this tune. And they just swam along behind the boat, listening, obviously listening. There was no other explanation for it, as soon as I started playing, they just converged. And I kept playing and playing, and I thought, now what if I slide half a semitone, half a note up to the tonic on the top of that scale? I'll try that. And it'll be different. They'll like that. A little bit of improvisation, And I went for it, and I played an off-key note. I played a really bad note. I was going to do this. I got this right later. So I tried to get that with that I had in my head, blew it, and just looked down. I thought, I looked down. The whale right beside us, he just went under the water, disappeared. I'm not kidding you. And I tried, looked across. The other one disappeared. They all went. They all disappeared. I played the tune, tried to get them back. They didn't come. Now that is what happened. There's probably all sorts of explanations for that, but I played a bum note, and I thought, okay, that's it.